it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Hey, welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. Pierre, McGuire, and myself, Jimmy Murphy. And we're going to get right into it here because we've got a very special guest joining us today. Terry Ryan, who you might have seen. He's all over the headlines right now for all the right reasons. And before we bring him on, I'm going to play a clip here from his press conference after he played his first pro game and maybe his last in over 20 years and just what it meant to him to have his daughter there. This one really pulled at the heartstrings, and it shows you what it's all about. So give a listen here.
This is up there with, just because of the odds of all this, it's up there with my first NHL game. And by, I don't know, but it's more unexpected and intriguing, just the way it went down. And yeah, it's, sorry, my daughter was there. She just hadn't seen me ever play pro. And she's 13, and, you know, I just wanted to go out there, and I knew her and her friends were here, and I didn't want to embarrass, man. And I just kept thinking about it. And she's really, when she was born, my life just got so much better. My pro career was, even at that point, almost a decade in the past. And I just didn't see this coming, and, you know, just look up and see her there, and to hear the ovation. I never thought I'd hear that ovation again in my life. And you just never know. I didn't know if people were thinking, this guy's nearly 50 years old. What are we doing? Is this a publicity stunt? I remember when I played in the American League and Gordie Howe came in. I think it was with Syracuse or Detroit Vipers maybe. And you know, he had that one shift. And I think some people thought that it was a publicity stunt, but I wouldn't have done it if it was a publicity stunt. I skate, and when I got it here today, I said, Matt, like, if you want me to play, I'll play the way I always did. And that's really all I could do. And I wasn't planning on fighting. Obviously, I know that it's not as big a part of the game anymore. I'm fine with that. But still, I don't know. I turn around and my buddy, my teammate, has got his helmet off. I did a minor bit of homework on players. I knew that Walker mixes it up a bit. What do I have to lose? I'm supposed to lose that fight, right? It's like when I fought Taidomi when I was 18. Unless he kills me, people are going to go WTF. And I just figured, again, no plans on that. But I'm going to play the way I'm going to play, supposing I'm 60 or 20.
That's great. That's great stuff. Let's bring him right in right now. Terry Ryan joining us here on the Eye Test. TR, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Good to catch up again, both of you guys. It's been a while, but
yeah, it has.
It's an honor to be here.
We've been talking about you all week, and actually, Pierre recalled that he actually broadcast all 8 games you played in the NHL, my friend.
I remember, you know, coming across Pierre many times back in the day. I thought there would be more of them, and that chapter kind of closed. So it's real cool to talk to both of you here today. And for the circumstance, you know, guys, honestly, I know you guys probably realize this, but a lot of people are still asking me if that was some sort of stunt, if they knew it, because it happened on my birthday, but it really wasn't. It was wow. If the stars have ever aligned in one spot for so many things to go right, or possibly wrong if it didn't work out right. You know, but,
that's amazing, though, Terry and Jimmy. I can tell you this: the one thing that is not fake about anything you do, Terry, is your passion and your honoring of the game. And I've known that since you were a kid that was playing in Tri-City with Damon Lanko and Brian Boucher. Or, you know, when you were playing in Freddie Beach, you know, and I was watching you play there. I think you played for Christian Bordeleau there, if I remember correctly.
Paul
and Bordeleau.
Yeah, and his son Sebastian was on our team.
Yeah, Cindy was there. And I think was Donald Brashear there then?
Donald had just, I came into Freddie as he was leaving, but I got called up when I was 18 from junior, as you do the end of the year, and we met. And actually, we came across each other. We got into fisticuffs in camp, but Brash was actually real good. He took me under his wing in one way or another when I was 19, 20. He flew over here to visit. Didn't say much, but, you know, real quiet kind of guy, if you can believe that back then. And Brash flew over here to spend time at George Street Festival with me like 20, 25 years ago.
Well, I can tell you, Jimmy, I've been to George Street a couple times, especially during World Junior Camps. It's a hell of a place to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't imbibe in the screech, but that's okay. I had other things that made it fun. But you know what, Jimmy, and Terry will appreciate this because the American Hockey League never gets old. I think it's the best developmental league in the world. I really do. And I think Terry would agree that. I remember during a lockout season, I was working in Ottawa, and they sent me down to PEI. Our farm team was in PEI. And we had a player by the name of Darcy Simon. He was a tough guy and a gentleman, right, Terry? Like tough, but a gentleman.
Real good guy, yeah.
I'm gonna say that he fought Donald Brashear 16 times in one season, and they were former teammates.
Wow.
Yeah, and Terry, you know what I'm talking about. Like Darcy Simon was a tough cookie. He is a tough and a great teammate.
Yep.
Yeah, and back then there wasn't social media and everything, so you relied on stories a little bit more. So by the time I got to camp, guys like Darcy Simon, definitely Brash. People forget Brash had 25 or 30 goals in the A, right? Like I looked up to Brash. Outside of all that tough guy stuff, he had a nose for the net. Like he did. You don't realize that. And Darcy Simon was good friends with a guy I played with there my first year, Jerry Fleming, big tough guy.
Big Jerry.
And Jerry introduced me to all those guys early on. And guys, I talk about one of my friends that passed away, Greg Bird Dog Smith. And Bird was ruthless on the ice, but he liked the fact that I didn't back down from him. And Bird made St. John's, Newfoundland home in the off season. And I got to know those guys pretty well. I'm glad I did, because to me, they were almost like bigger than the game because of these stories I'd heard, like Paul Bunyan or Davy Crockett kind of things, right? Like I'm going, what? Really? They did what? And I got to know these guys. And, I love a good story. I have a folklore degree with an English minor. I'm glad I learned how to articulate myself on paper and put out my book and all that. But I took folklore because I enjoy those, the characters of the game. My dad played pro in the 70s, and there was a lot more nicknames, I always loved Jimmy Pie Face McKenzie. I mean, come on, right? And it seemed like everybody had a name or an attitude, or some kind of, not everybody, but every team had 4 or 5 characters of the game, right? And so I happened to come through when there were so many of those characters that I could absorb things off of. So the stats on Hockey DB might not look like it. It was, outside of, I made a bad decision when I was younger. I didn't go back to camp. I didn't get along with Michel Therrien, but I didn't handle that the right way. I never really went in and shook his hand and said, okay, Michel, what do we need to do here? Like, I don't like you. You don't like me. Why? And now what do we do? And so both of us were, I was a rookie player. He was a rookie coach. So there's things I would do differently. But what people don't see on Hockey DB with those 8 games is like 96, 97. I was there all year to practice and hang out with the guys. And then I'd be there all in the summers. And, they became real good friends of mine. I wish I played longer, but I don't have a time machine. And over time, I learned from my mistakes, but unfortunately I was back here. My career was long over. I was either working for Red Bull or in school. I really learned a lot about life in between pro games there in those 2 decades. And not that you asked, but the special thing about this time is that I got to go out on my own terms. The first time I didn't, and that really, I was the biggest one to blame for that. And I'm really glad that it worked out this way.
We're glad for you too, Terry. And one thing, like I told you in that text I sent you, struck a nerve with me, just being a father of a daughter, similar age. She's 12, almost Penny's age as well, Maddie. And, I've made my share of mistakes and kind of had to make my comeback story as well. And, I don't think it happens without her. And this too, Pierre, you're a father. They put things into perspective, and you start to realize, it's not about me anymore. It's about her, or a son if you have it. And just seeing you say that, and the raw emotion, you really hit me hard and in a great way. And, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I know. I feel like I know Maddie because I follow you. And look, we used to hang out. I just don't see you as much anymore. But, I'm very aware of everything that goes on. I'm glad social media gets a bad rap. I'm glad from that perspective I can keep in touch with people.
Exactly.
And, for me, I left home at 14. I'm an only child. Like, I think my book maybe reflects this, but hockey's a vehicle to connect me to everything I've done in my life. So whether you want to define me by the Montreal experience, fine, you can, but I think that's lazy. I went to there's lots of unique stuff, and I always needed good teammates around me. I'm an only child. Imagine going to play junior in BC at the time, 14 years old, first year Bantam, and going out there and playing junior. I needed all my teammates to get on board, just like last night or Sunday night. Be like, you can say what you want, but I'm out there, and there's players that are connected with the St. John's Maple Leafs that are prospects, and they've got to look the other way because I'm going to get a shift. And if you know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shifts, whatever it was, that's more shifts that they're not out there. And everybody got on board, just like when I went out to Quesnel at 14. I went to a Quesnel. Most guys were local. Now I'm taking a spot from somebody, right? And I could feel that tension a little bit. But the more I got to know those guys, and it was a rougher era, so you could really prove yourself out there when it came to being, you know, picking up for your teammates and stuff. Maybe a little easier. There were more of those situations. So it was really ironic that this happened because, guys, I respect the way hockey's going. I get it. I mean, I'm one that likes fights in the game. I'm not going to, if they leave, I'm not going to sit here and cling to it if most people don't want it. I'm just saying I prefer it. Now, for a reason, I think we're in a good spot. People say, oh, well, there's no more fighting, but there's still like 300 a year. Like there's still a lot. If you're in another sport and you look at ours, and there is something neat about, you know, that respect. I told Penny Lane, being my daughter that came, I said, like, you know why I fought there, right? Because, guys, the situation presented itself. Just, like, for a second, it was a time machine, and it was 1997. My friend got hit. I didn't pick that. If I picked that fight in the first period, I'm playing up to what a lot of people expected. First of all, I'm embarrassing my generation of player because I wanted to prove I could play a little bit, right? Now, but if something happens now that I jump in there as a teammate, that's completely different. And my buddy James Melindy, who's been the captain of that team, one of the heart and soul players that they've had their whole existence. He sits here now, plays mostly home games, the odd road, because he's a firefighter and he does both. He's got a passion for the game like I do. He's just a lot younger, but I've known him from day one. I knew him since he's 10 years old, watching him and proud of him. And, you know, so when I looked down and I thought he got run worse than it didn't end up being too dirty, but it looked like it to me, and I'm on the ice. And, you know, at some point, like I tried to explain in the presser, you know, they hired me to play, though. Outside of that novelty, I'm still hired to play. And the guys, there's 5 on the team. And then there's Adam Party, the assistant coach, that they had to really vouch. I'm sure from Matt Cook's point of view, this is ludicrous. But those guys knew because they skate with them all the time, and I play ball hockey in the summers, and they know I'm still passionate for it. And, you know, I would have loved to keep playing, but my ankle got hurt. But Zach called, and, you know, a few of the other guys were like, you know, T-Bone, you got the cardio. We know that. And I was just like, boys, hopefully I can keep up with the play, you know, but not that you asked, but, you know, all of it came together, and Matt Cook did not have to put me on the ice, and it would have been a nice story just to start the game and reset kind of my exit from it. But no, fists got flying, and to get back to it, sorry, but my daughter, I said to her, like, you know why? I said, like, she plays soccer, you know. I didn't force hockey on her younger. Looking back, I don't know if I did her a disservice, but team sports are the main thing to me. So, like, she plays soccer at a high level. She's on the provincial team, one of the better players, and she plays a bit of basketball because she's athletic and she can handle it. But, you know, I just like that. I wanted her to be involved in sports. I think a sports dressing room is a metaphor for life in a lot of ways. If you're successful within that room, you're probably going to be a leader in the real world, right? So whether it's hockey or volleyball or basketball or soccer, it didn't matter to me. And so I said to her, you know, that's not in your sport. Now, the beautiful thing about hockey is that it's so skilled and so finesse, and at the same time, it can be so tough and unforgiving. And there's hits and there's fights, and that's part of it. So I said there's a time and a place for it in hockey, and that was the time. And there's a respect that's involved. And that's why I knocked on his room after, and I shook his hand, just like I used to back in the day. If something went awry out there, you know, like that's. And I was taught that by my elders, by Ty Domi, one of the first people I ever fought in professional hockey, who's one of the first people to reach out. I've never hung out with Ty Domi, but we fought a few times, and he respected it back then. And there was a, you know, there still exists a code. It might be a little blurrier to obviously see, but it still exists. And Zach Walker came out. I didn't realize he was from Boise, Idaho. He said, yeah, I'm from Boise. I said, my God, I played there. And he said, I know. And I said, oh, God, he would have been 3 years old. You know, and that's the beautiful thing about hockey. People might see the fight. Oh, you barbarian. I'm like, no, but we were having, a chat after the game, and half their team came over to Greensleeves, and we had a chat, and we were sharing stories. It was great. It's the beautiful thing about hockey. I
Holy
think,
Terry. That's
that
awesome.
mix.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, I can tell you one thing. I remember doing Philip Samuelson's first ever NHL game. I coached his father, Alfie, in Pittsburgh, and I remember when that little kid was running around our dressing room in diapers.
Yeah.
So, it's not like fighting somebody, but it's, you coach the father and you see the kid and you're like, holy moly. One of the things, and I watched you play so much in junior, Terry, you had this amazing relationship with Damon Lanko on the ice.
Yeah.
How was it off the ice?
It was good. Lanks, I believe we talk through texts, and once in a while, Lanks won't let a year go by that we don't talk. As time started to pass from junior, especially what happened to me, I think, Bush too. I still talk to Bush all the time. We look back together, man. I went 8th overall. Jamin went 5th, and Bush went 21st or 22nd.
Yeah.
3 first rounders from Tri-City, and we all went there. We didn't know. And Lanks, of all of us, coming in, I think I was probably the biggest prospect that they picked in a long time. Lanks was, I'm not saying he wasn't. I just mean he really grew into his own in Tri-Cities. And then we went outside the box to bring in Bush. And all of a sudden we look at each other after like the first week of the season and we're like, whoa, we're rated pretty high. So we got to ride that together. And that'll bring you together, like in a way that you can't really explain, because you're going through this roller coaster ride of ups and downs and everybody wants a piece of you. And every night you're going out there and, part of the pressure isn't just to win as a team, but I got to put up stats and I got to do this and that. And this is expected of me. And the interviews were just starting. And so I could go into him or the boys and bounce some ideas off them. We did that together. And I don't think there's any way that we could ever be separated from that. That was a big time connection that goes beyond hockey, that goes beyond just even a regular friendship. That's in our blood, and the boys are real good. To answer your question, how Lanks was off the ice, a man of very few words, but we hung out a lot. He let me do the talking, and I think much like a relationship where, there might be a married couple and they're opposites, and you go, what? We weren't exactly opposites, but I think the differences between me and Damon in particular brought us together. He embraced the way I was, and I did him, and we're kind of from different parts of the tracks when it comes to energetic personalities, let's say.
Jimmy, what's amazing though about Damon played over 1,000 games in the National Hockey League. I don't think that gets nearly enough credit in an era when 1,000 games, like 500 games was a lot. 1,000 games, a heck of a career. It's a heck of a number.
Yeah.
And Brian Boucher had a tremendous career with a lot of different teams, but he had an amazing, like in those days, a kid from Rhode Island's not going out to play in the Western Hockey League. It's just like, if you look what Terry did, there are not a lot of kids leaving Newfoundland to go play out in the Western Hockey League. They're going to the Quebec League or maybe Ontario back then.
Yeah.
Two unbelievable pass. Pretty amazing.
That's the other part of it. Like we were there, and for all of us to be in that particular time and space, we knew was extremely fortunate. And I say fortunate because we got to get fortunate because we're friends more than anything. And it's one thing to get to ride it out together, but the time that we're doing that, we're boys growing into men, and that means a lot, but I met Lanks at camp. I guess I'm 15, I'm 14 coming in. He's 15, because the draft is so young out there. It's when you're 14 years old.
Bantam draft.
That's
a Bantam draft. Yep.
Yeah, right. The Bantam draft. I went 3rd overall in that. And Lanks got a late birthday, so I'm happy for that, because he was on the Americans the year before I was, and he kind of experienced all that, and where he was a friend, and I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, so he was pushing those boundaries, which made it a lot more comfortable for me. And I will say, a lot of people used to question me and my parents and that whole move about moving out west, but it's not for everybody to play junior at 14. I get it, but it worked. It worked for me. My dad didn't push me towards it, guys. No one was. I got out there. I didn't know. I'm thinking the whole reason I went out there was to get drafted to Tri-Cities. They told me that they would. And now I figured I might not play Bantam, but I didn't really know I was going to play on the junior team. I was thinking maybe midget AAA. But when I got out there and I loved playing with the visor, I was like, oh, God, please, I never want to go back to minor hockey ever again. That was in camp. And same thing. They had a few injuries. Now all of a sudden I'm skating for a junior team. Those players embraced me so much. Start of the year, guys. Well, of all of the things, and if you were just to look at the hockey DB or the analytics, you'd see some big time achievements in there that I should be proud of, which I am. Even playing in the NHL, I mean, not everybody's so fortunate getting drafted in the first round. But last night or Sunday night is going to go up there with that first year. I started, guys. I didn't think I could keep up with the play. 2-3 games into it, I'm like, how am I going to survive? But the guys on the junior team really took me under their wing. Yeah, felt cool, and I was like, geez, guys, can I keep playing on the junior team? And there kept being injuries. There kept being a reason to put me in. At the end of the year, I lead the team in scoring. Like that's how much these guys took me under their wing in 222 minutes. Like, so I really came into my own there, and those guys embraced me. And yeah, man, looking back, I'm like, wow. I had to metaphorically stick handle through things off the ice that, that most people 5 years older than me have to do for the first time. And so I needed them to for me and not let things get carried away. And they didn't. My teammates in Quesnel, much like my teammates on the Growlers, wow, is that a span? 32 years. But very similar, right? They had to really embrace the moment.
Full circle.
It wouldn't have worked for me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Terry, I wanted to just come in because you come from such a tight-knit community, and you end up going back there and continuing your life there after hockey. What was it like through all those travels and going to these different communities, cultures, so to speak, after where you came from?
Well, look, there's one thing that's different about this time. And like I said, not every player gets to retire on their own terms. And I certainly did for a long time. And now I certainly can. I'm like, this is wild, first of all. But in that time, you mentioned different backgrounds, different cultures, different people. What was so unique about that game that I really didn't see coming, it was cool. I was only thinking really before, I want to keep up. My daughter's here. She was born 7 years after my last professional game. She's 13. She's here with her friends. And as I was going to go out for a warm-up, I hadn't really given it, I was going to do it. And I know that maybe it was subconscious, but I started to go, okay, yes, I'm in shape, but can I keep up with this play? Is this going to, and I don't want to embarrass. So that's really what was on my mind. But when I got out there in warm up, I looked up and I said, wow, there was teachers from grade school. There was people I played. I have a life in soccer and baseball too. I'm an okay amateur, but it didn't go beyond that. But I've been playing that the whole time. And ball hockey, I've won world championships, and there was people from all those walks of life. There was people in the film community, guys. Because of mostly my poor decisions, my career was over, and then the injuries, of course, and I couldn't get back. I went back to school and I started a career in film. People think, oh, it's great. Yeah, he looks like a hockey player. He's playing Ted Hitchcock, guys. 5, 6, maybe 7 years on crew, doing locations, AD work, jump how high, taking orders.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that as a negative. I really enjoyed it. And there's similarities. There's got to be a lot of teamwork on set or else it doesn't work. But all of those, but there was at least 100 people from that world that had never ever been to a hockey game, let alone a Growlers game. They were there to see me. And it was a Sunday at 4. We get good attendance here, but Sundays on 4 aren't usually sold out. This was nearly sold out. And people from I hate
Canadians fans too, right?
Canadians fans, and like a lot of people from different walks of life that I'd experienced things with, and all of a sudden they're all in one room. And they're hanging out together and they're exchanging stories. And some of them had heard stories, but they're like, oh, did that really happen? And now they're meeting each other for the first time. It was like the ending of the movie Big Fish.
Yeah.
In a way, how you hear all these things and it sounds like a tall tale. And then, I'm going, wow. Andrew, how did you ever come across Chris Pettigrew, my good buddy from day one? Oh, well, we were getting a beer in the intermission and I heard him talking and wow. And I was like, wow, this. So when I came out at the end and all that energy was in the building and I got to like skate around and really give my appreciation to them. And I realize now I'm like, I wasn't that far gone this whole time. All these people have been paying attention, haven't they? You know, they've been supporting me the whole time. I just didn't have a chance to get out here like this. And after the game, there were so many well-wishers and so many people that had stories. I sat there, guys, and I ate it up. I said, I'm a growler for one day. And the boys were all waiting.
That's
They were
awesome.
going into their all-star break. It couldn't have been any better time. And not only that, it was my birthday, but they were like, oh, they were like, no, this is your night. And we're going to stay out. And so we went over to Greensleeves, the pub there that has been the hockey bar for 30 or 40 years.
Long time. Long time.
We were telling some stories, and a few guys on Adirondack came over too. And here we were with some appetizers in the middle with some pints going back and forth. And we were all telling hockey stories. And I was like, you know, I'm going to relish this, whether it wasn't a publicity stunt or a novelty, but I'm like, it is a one-day thing, but I'm going to really embrace it because, you know, for that snippet of time, I was a growler. I was their teammate and I'd been watching them all along, and some of them I'm their best buddies. So, and I mean that. A lot of them, 5 guys on that team I know real well. And so just to experience as a hockey player, I don't, when I said, you know, a publicity stunt like Gordie Howe, I love Gordie Howe. Come on, like, man, the way I play, I look up to him. But it was at that time, I think he wanted to play in like 5 decades in a row or something. So it was a little bit you know, there was some marketing to it. But this, like I said, if I only started the game and had that one shift, it still would have been a nice story. But I'm so glad that Matt Cook had the confidence after he saw me play. Like, I got to be honest, after the first shift, I was like, okay, I can do this. You know, like 20 years, I was kind of like riding a roller coaster. People said bike. No, this was like roller coaster because it was adrenaline. I'm going, whoa. I had to make 2 plays right off the bat that are hockey IQ. And I'm like, okay, let's get this ship going. You know, I'm ready. Let's keep going. So he didn't have to put me out though. And in the third, he gave me a regular shift. And, you know, it was electric in the building. And so point is, whether I got a shift or not, it still would have been great to warm up and to represent the Growlers, but I legit played. And, you know, there's part of that I don't know. I couldn't always look back at the end of my career and be proud about it, but now I certainly can. Like, that was something else, you know.
Terry, you know, you had you basically, Terry had a wake, but he's still alive. With all those people from all the different walks of life. Because I'm thinking that as he's saying this, I'm like, the only time that really happens is when you die, you know?
Yeah.
And they're all sitting around you. But you were alive for it. That's great.
Yeah.
You know, I see that number 14 with the name Ryan over it. And there you go, Montreal Canadiens sweater. Jimmy, this is predating you and Terry, but when I was a kid growing up in Montreal, Claude Provo wore number 14, one of the best defensive forwards in the history of the National Hockey League. And Mario Tremblay wore number 14 for the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm wondering, Terry, when you were in Montreal, Mario was just getting out of the coaching gig. Alain Vigneault had come in. Did you ever talk to Mario about wearing number 14? Did you ever talk to Mario at all about his role? Just so everybody understands, I don't even know if Terry knows this. Mario Tremblay was the first 18-year-old player to ever play for the Montreal Canadiens.
Wow.
No 18-year-old had ever played for Montreal until Mario Tremblay played for them.
Did not know that, but the number wasn't lost on me. He came in, and he was running things. He was the coach for as you know, obviously. And when I went to my first camp, he had a chat. Number 14 was sitting there waiting for me, which is weird. I'll tell you why. I didn't think in the Canadiens organization I could ever get 14 because, you know, usually I saw guys coming in and, you know, even my buddies, Aaron Asham, Michael Ryder, who played for, you know, they were like number 60 something, 72, I think, you know, so, and there's lots of examples around that, but for that reason, now it was sitting there already. So I asked Mario and he winked at me and he led me to believe that he was okay with me wearing it, which was cool. And I was number 20 in junior, but my captain, Todd Clausen, passed away in a car accident.
He passed away, by the way, tragically. He was a Pittsburgh Penguin draft pick.
Yeah, he was.
I know the player very well.
Yeah, you do. Great guy. And I'm 15 years old. I get called up again. Even though I was playing in Quesnel, I'm still a 15-year-old bantam. And I went down there. I played a few games my First game I fought Cale Hulse, one of the toughest guys in the league, and he
So-
gave it to me, but I got a couple of
Jeff
punches.
was a tough cookie.
Yeah, I was 15. He loved it after the game. I took him and John Badouk. Holson Badouk took me aside and said, "Man, you're nuts." And I remember Todd really, really getting off on that. He loved it. He loved it. And we all went out. And for a little bit, I remember, I can't remember, the team would bring me down. Quesnel was relatively closer than Newfoundland. So the odd weekend, if they were playing in Kamloops or something, even when I was 14, as soon as they drafted me, I'd go down and I'd practice with them and stuff. The boys wanted me to know everybody by the time I was making my transition into the West. So Todd became a real good friend. And I was with Steve O'Rourke, and whose brother Dan is a referee in the NHL, and whose son refereed the game the other day. Did the official? I couldn't believe it. Came out after. I'm like, what? You know Dano and Steve? He's like, yeah, he's my dad. I went, oh my God, because I was with Steve coaching at the Penticton Okanagan Hockey School. I needed to work on my skating every year. That was my worst attribute, and that's why when I hurt my ankle, I knew I didn't have a step to lose. I knew it was done, but. Sorry, my cat. Penny Lane, can you take the cat? Sorry about that. Where was I? I didn't have the step to lose.
You're talking about Penticton Okanagan Hockey School.
Penticton. And I was there with Steve O'Rourke, and we got the news about Todd because we were all going to go. It was Tri-Cities. There's a thing called it's the boat races. I forget the name on it, but it's like, every town has a festival, that city days or whatever. It was that sort of thing. And we were all going down there. I was leaving with Stevie the next day, and we got the call. Todd and them are leaving. The boys had a carpool going from Edmonton down to Tri-Cities, and that tragic event happened. And he really was one of the first that had an impact because I really, really looked up to him. Obviously, he's the captain. He's drafted to Pittsburgh, and he was a clear talent out there.
He was an NHL player. He was going to play.
He was,
Really?
yeah. And so, guys, what happened? This is funny. So Dean Tilchin played on our team, in Tri-Cities. And it's funny because I got traded for him. When I went out west, he was a 50-goal scorer. Oh, he got traded from Tri-City to Red Deer and became a 50-goal scorer while I was like languishing in Quesnel, waiting to make my entrance into the league. So the Tri-City fans, I come in at 16, and they're going, well, we traded a guy who just got 50 for this guy. So there's a little bit of pressure right off the bat. Ironically, Tilts gets sent back to our team, and now for the first part of that year, it's me, him, and Lankow playing together. And we would talk about Todd. He was, played years with Dean, so they were real good friends. And we're like, what are we going to do? So we came up with the Todd Clausen Memorial Fund. And for each goal that Tilly scored, they would put money towards a scholarship fund for Todd until he got traded again right away.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting there, and I know there was guys on the team that knew him. And even though I didn't have all those games played with him, I'd spent a lot of time with him, and he really made an impact. So I went into our coach, Bob Laux, that year, and I said, do you mind if I take that over? I'd really like to do that. And I winked at him. I said, Bob, I had 16 last year, 16 goals as a 16-year-old. And I said, I don't know if everybody here realizes the way junior works, and I think I'm going to get more this year. And he says, I think you are too. I said, can I take it over? He said, sure. So I took it over, and I ended up getting my 50th goal on the last game of the year.
Wow.
And all this money donated to the Todd Clausen Memorial Fund. It was a great thing. And so when I went to Montreal, I walked in, and I was going to ask them because, again, to wear anything low in Montreal is a real honor. And lo and behold, it was already waiting for me. So the stars aligned there too.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, and I don't know if you remember Mario Tremblay as a player, Terry, at all. He was tough.
Yeah, I've heard stories. My grandfather talked about him plenty of times.
He, as an 18-year-old, he's fighting Dave Schultz. It's kind of like you as an 18-year-old fighting Ty Domi. I mean,
wow.
That's pretty significant.
It's funny because in
Go
the
ahead.
years that passed, in the years that passed, I got to know that. I knew the stories when I got there, but now there's like I can see footage of Mario Tremblay that I didn't really have access to in the late 90s, which is odd because we're further away from that point.
100%.
But with social media and everything, so I knew the stories, but now I really know.
What people forget about the teams he was on in Montreal in the mid 70s, they're the ones that knocked Philadelphia out. And back then, that helped change the culture of hockey because Broad Street Bullies were the intimidators of all time. And you had Larry Robinson beating the tar out of Dave Schultz, and then you had Mario doing Dave Schultz, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, these guys aren't just fast and skillful; they're tough as nails.
Yeah. You can really attest to that. Look, I try to say to people, I'm like, and my dad, right, was a product of that. My dad played in the OHA at 49, I think, nearly had 50 goals. Got drafted to the Minnesota Fighting Saints and the North Stars. Set the shorthanded goal record in Minnesota. What a weird turn of events for the Minnesota Fighting Saints. But my dad is from a family of 6, and none of them had their degree. His dad was a waiter. His mom didn't work. They were poor. They were poor. So his goal was always to get his schooling paid for. He wanted to be the first 12 brothers and sisters in his dad's side. I think 6 on his mom's side, and no one had their, again, they're St. Joseph's fishing community is different. I'm not saying they were idiots. They just never had their schooling, and my dad saw a route to do that, and that was his goal. And he says, look, hockey was, I go, why didn't you? He goes, I did go back, and I got sent down to Kalamazoo. He had 105 points, IHL All-Star. But he's like, beyond that, I was proud to have a degree. I'm like, wow. But he played in that era, and so I got to know, what I could. I read all kinds of books on it, when I was younger, and as VHS tapes became available and YouTube and everything, and I look back and I say to people, I'm like, I think the Flying Frenchman doesn't do it justice. And with this Montreal, you get this, and it is, with the Maurice Richard and the beauty and the skill in it, but they were tough. There was no way to beat Philly without standing up to them. So some of that is now better than ever. They got it it's HD. It's and you can go back and watch those games, and those guys were tough. Larry Robinson, I have a whole new respect. I met him he was in my radar. I knew he was a Canadian back in the day because I'm a huge fan. But, he was playing on the Kings, and then he became a coach, and I didn't really realize how tough that guy was. And, over the years, I might have only played 8 games, but I do use the alumni room. Rajon Houle now is a friend. I took, water under the bridge. My daughter saw her first game last year. Reggie got us tickets and sat with us. All that's water under the bridge. And I'm glad, because I was always a Habs fan. But now that I've gotten to know them all over the years, right down in the room, and I have a whole new respect. And people that think that team wasn't tough need to go back and reevaluate everything that they thought, because they were tough. To beat the Philly Flyers, you had to be really tough.
So just so everybody understands, Larry Robinson in a game against the Flyers hit Gary Dornhofer and broke the boards in the old Montreal Forum on the track. Broke the boards. They broke the boards. But I will tell you, of all the Montreal Canadiens tough guys, and Terry needs to know this, I worked with the late, great John Ferguson, Sr. I'm not sure there was ever a tougher man that played in the NHL than John Ferguson, Sr.
Good to hear.
And I will tell you this. I was at a scouting meeting once, and he got really mad. I was working with him. He got really mad at one of the scouts, and he grabbed him by his collar, and he basically lifted him out of the chair. He says, "You're getting me mad," and then he dropped him, and I was like, "Oh no, Fergie, no!"
Wow, no, I've heard, but this is firsthand stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
I hear these stories, and like I said, they almost get this folklore to them, like David Crockett. You're like, was he really that tough as they're saying?
Yeah, no. So the late great John Beliveau would tell you, when they brought John Ferguson up from Cleveland to play for the Canadiens, it was to make sure nobody messed with John Ferguson, or sorry, with Jean Beliveau. And Fergie would just do tap dances on all these guys. And when I was a real young kid, I'm going to say maybe 8 or 9 years old, there was a Saturday night game between Chicago and Montreal, and John Ferguson fought Bobby Hull at center ice. He fought him, and he beat him up bad.
Wow.
And the whole game was going on, and the Zamboni, the blood was still on the ice, even though they Zamboni.
That's
really,
it was unbelievable. I'm just telling you, Fergie was tough as tough could be.
And you know what? You mentioned Jean Beliveau, guys. I've never, ever to this day been in a room with such commanding presence.
Yeah.
And this guy, when he walked in, and I was in rooms with Jason
I
Momoa,
witnessed it too. Yep.
This was okay, what a level of respect that guy got as soon as he walked in. He took all the energy. I don't mean out, because he spread it, but it was all positive energy, but a very, like, I just got a presence around him. I was
Aura.
so lucky to
He had
have
an
talked
aura.
to him.
You know
And he
what's
spoke to
amazing
me.
that Terry would bring that up. I'm so proud of you for saying that, because
Yeah.
he's a larger than life icon. This would never happen in pro sports today. He played for the Quebec Aces
Yeah.
in the Quebec Senior League. The Canadians under Frank Selke Sr. wanted to sign Jean Beliveau. So Quebec said, no, we're not. The Montreal Canadiens bought the league. They bought the league
Just to get him.
Beliveau pro and then close the league.
Wow.
I forgot that. And I knew that
Bought
happened,
the
and I
league.
forgot. Yeah.
They said, you know
Wow.
what? We're going to let you
What a
guys keep
power
playing,
move.
but we're taking him. He's playing for us.
Wow. That's great. I mean, I was up there, guys, when he passed away. I was living up there, and I just remember, like, the only time I ever saw a city mourn somebody like that was if it, it was a president or somebody that died, like a king or a mayor, what have you. It was amazing, the outpouring of emotion they had there. Pierre, I want to ask you, though, as a coach, how important was it to have a guy like Terry Ryan on your team when you coached? Because you can see he was probably a glue guy. He would definitely, I imagine, pass the eye test.
Oh, he passed the eye test because I saw him more than once, and I saw him starting in junior. So he passed the eye test for me. I'll give you some of the names of guys I had the privilege of working with. Phil Bork, who was an important part of our 91 and 92 Stanley Cup winning teams. Jay Caulfield, who was a critically important part of our 91 and 92 Stanley Cup winning teams. I had the honor to coach Jim McKenzie in Hartford. And trust me, guys like Pat Verbeek and Andrew Castles and Jeff Sanderson got a lot of room because Big Jim could do his stuff. He did his chores really well. I also had other guys like Mark Janssens. I had other guys like Mark Putfin. I mean, guys I have so much respect for that did a lot of stuff that wasn't really pleasant, but they had to do it to stay in the league and stay relevant. And I always had a ton of respect for those people. And I know Terry, I think, was aware of it. Every time that he played, I always try to make a mention of players like him. They matter so much to the well-being of an organization. They really do.
I remember you really, honestly, supported me. Most, like, I don't have bad memories of, just, again, I wish things worked differently, but that whole time, I don't have many bad memories of the media or anything. I got a little bit of a hard time, but I kind of deserved it. I mean, you should be under the microscope. You're a Montreal first-round pick. So I never really, and I was kind of used to that. Just so you know, and people listening, because I often get that question, but I embraced all the media that, if you want to call it pressure or whatever. And I know, getting back to it, it was at first overwhelming to have guys like Guy Lafleur and Jean Beliveau and these guys there. And imagine the first game I play, like, there's no glass or anything. So I could hear, like, these guys are behind us. Like, sitting down, they're having popcorn. I'm going, and Mark Recchi's next to me. He's like, don't be nervous. I'm like, no, there's no need. I can hear Guy Lafleur talking about 4 Stanley Cups in the late 70s. I can hear him do it in between bites of his popcorn. And, that's just normal. At the beginning of it, I mean, the Rocket Richard was alive. I'm going, okay, this is pretty cool, but it's impossible not to be nervous. But after like 2 weeks, honestly, even at the first camp, it went the other way, because all these guys, when you realize that they embrace, your situation, the fact that you're a Montreal Canadian, then it works the other way. So those guys, to me, all those legends that Yvon Lambert ran the restaurant, things like that, names that you don't even really think of, but I'm going into a meal after practice every day, and I'm hearing stories from Yvon Lambert, and that has to help you in life. It might not in games played in the NHL, but I'm telling you, learning those things at a young age certainly helped set me on my way to be a human. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Jimmy, I got to tell you and Terry this. So he's talking about not having glass behind the benches. So we play a game in Quebec the night before. We're still alive in the playoffs. We're 5 points out. I'm coaching Hartford. We beat Quebec in either 3-2 or 2-1. We get on the bus. We get our Saint-Hubert. We come down to Montreal. I'm a Montreal kid coming back, doing English and French interviews. It's all good. And my mother's sitting behind the bench, no glass, okay? So she's sitting behind the visitor's bench. So it's a night that Lyle Lodeline sets a record for most points by a Montreal Canadiens defenseman in one game. He gets 6. He gets 6 points in one game. Such a record. I'm going batshit crazy, if you know what I mean. I'm not happy. So I'm dropping F-bombs. I'm going. And after the first period, my mother comes down. She doesn't tell anybody. She's my mom. She goes, "You should be ashamed of yourself. That language is reprehensible." And the players are like, "Who's that lady?" And I'm afraid to tell them it's my mom.
God bless her.
She just let me have it. Oh, so that's my one story in Montreal without the glass, and
Oh, wow.
this goes off of what Terry was talking about because those guys were larger than life, and they would sit
Oh,
right
yeah.
behind the Canadians.
Right
bench.
behind. You can hear them breathing.
It was
You can hear them
intimidating.
talking.
Yeah.
And speaking of Lyle Odeline, he was there my first game, man. He was great. I scored a goal, well, exhibition, but it's in the Montreal Forum. I scored a goal against Boston of all teams, Jimmy, and I got in a fight with Steve Leach, and they just thought that was great. And Demers, it was because, and I'd gone through camp, and I had a few dust-ups with Pierre, and Jacques Demers said, "Look, you're going back to Tri-City," but he said, "You've definitely earned a game in the Forum, and it's shutting down at the end of the year, so would you like to play?" I'm like, "Sure, of course, I'd love to." And so that was it. And Odie was playing, and him and Mike Keane and Mark Lamb took me after the game.
Oh, my
They
gosh.
took me back to they were renting a spot there, and we shared stories well into the night. One of my best memories. And I remember, see, Lyle was such he was so tough and outspoken, and he was a larger than life individual at the time, and he I like that you said he got 6 points because a lot of people forget that he could even handle the puck, and he used to do crazy things. Do you remember when he got the puck and he took a slap shot into the Buffalo bench? Do you remember that? I remember that really standing out. And that was right around that time. I can't remember, but I remember he was on my radar, and like that happened. I'm going, wow, like stuff that just never happens anymore.
Well, Terry, I got to ask you, you went into the Crush Can in Moose Jaw when you were playing in Tri-City. Now, Jimmy, I'm just going to tell you right now, the Crush Can had probably the best ice in hockey. It was freezing cold, but it was fast. It was really fast. And everybody was on top of you. So think back to these days. Terry, I don't know if you were in the league yet. They had Lyle Odeline. They had Jim McKenzie. They had Mike Keane. Wow. You'd think guys wanted to go in there and get off the bus, let's say from Brandon after 7 hours and go play in Moose Jaw?
Like Iron League, eh?
Imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, imagine that. It was always Moose Jaw was wild. Yeah, that little can, and it had you couldn't see one side if you were sitting at the top. You couldn't see the other, and they had the old minor hockey clock, like, and it was freezing, and the fans were on top of you. That was an intimidating place, especially. I talk about the Western League. I'm like, the Western Division was a completely different thing than the Eastern Division. It was just like coming from Tri-City and Portland and Seattle and warmish and certainly not as cold as the prairies. And when we would go over and bigger cities, and there was a lot of Nirvana were coming out, the whole grunge movement, Pearl Jam, Sound, all that was happening in Seattle, and it just seemed like and then you'd go over it, and I'm not putting it down. I love small towns. I mean, I live in one. But when we went to Moose Jaw and like Prince Albert and Swift Current, I was like, wow, this is a different league we're playing in. And they'd always had tough guys who Reed Lowe. They had a guy, Rob Tremblay, about 5'10", 5'70", but he could knock anybody out in the league. Never, ever an easy place to play.
So, Jimmy, you need to know this too. And I believe this was still in effect, Terry, when you were playing. Because there was a team out in the West that was just savage. They would steal the other team's pucks in warm-ups.
Yeah.
Okay. They've only allowed one team on the ice for warm-up at a time. I'm not kidding. Was that going on when you were there, Terry?
Did it go on? I'll tell you this. I don't know when that began or when it ended, but my entire Western League experience, my first warm-up with the other team was when I played against the Toronto that game
I'm
against
just telling you,
Boston.
it was crazy.
Yeah, there was too many.
It was really.
How about this? Coming in as a kid, I'm looking at right when these people started sending around these VHS tapes and stuff, and I'm looking at, remember the Tri-City stick swinging incident in Seattle? And I'm going, what in God's name am I getting into? And I remember being with the team on one of those trips, and when I went down, I don't know if it was Ed Chenoweth, maybe was the president.
He was a commissioner. He was a commissioner.
So those guys came in the room, like a group of them. And they came in and they were upset. They were pissed off. And they said, yeah, you guys, you think, what we're going to do now? We're taking away your 10-minute misconducts. So no more. So you can't try to get all these penalty minutes. If you get a 5 and a 10, only the 5 is going to count. So my whole time, that's true. So my whole time in the league, I'm going in as a 14-year-old learning this. 15, I'm getting a game. And I'm going, we can't warm up before the game because there's too many brawls. And they're taking away they're taking away 10s because guys are using them to try to elevate their penalty minutes. And I'm thinking, this is wild. And what happens? Kerry Toporowski with Spokane breaks the record anyway. He gets 512, 515 penalty minutes with no 10s allowed. I'm going, whoa, this is crazy.
Hey,
Everybody.
Jimmy, that guy was big time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all the synapses were connected there on that.
Yeah. Well, Ogie Oglethorpe or what?
Yeah, somewhere.
It was every team had him. I mean, it was I think I'm trying to it's tough to really rate what was the toughest place to go into, but my area there wasn't much tougher than Saskatoon. Wade Belak, Chris McAllister, Rhett Warner, Chad Allen. They were and a slew of guys that would knock you out as soon as look at you. Guys that were skating around. Clark Wilm, one of the best open ice hitters in the history of the Western League. You couldn't put your head down. Every time you were on the ice against Saskatoon, they made you aware of it, and you were hearing footsteps.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that. I'm not necessarily even complaining. I used to kind of thrive on. I mean, I would have enjoyed maybe an easier time on the ice, but there's something to be said if you can handle that, right? Like I felt that I was a player that could handle that, so it might be able to separate me from the rest of the pack. So
Right.
I kind of embraced all that, and those guys became buddies. You play against them hard enough, they're like, yeah, hockey's still hockey. So I embraced that side of it more than anything. But looking back, God, it wasn't for everybody. It was a tough go,
Yeah. I wanted to, Terry, just your take actually on hockey today. I mean, obviously, as you said in the beginning, there's not much fighting anymore, but you said something there where you had to know when a guy was on the ice. That's one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you do too, that players don't do that enough. Like they're not aware enough, to know, all right, that guy could really hurt me out there, and I need to have my head up. And I think that's something that's kind of faded from the game, no?
I think, yeah. I mean, even the other day when we came in and towards the end of my go, and I'm not totally disconnected at any point from hockey. I know how it works. I've done some scouting. There's been a team here for better or worse most of the time.
Right.
So all this video and stuff before the game, people think maybe we weren't prepared back then. We didn't do as much of that, but definitely everybody did their homework. And like, I knew who everybody was, not just in a fighting manner, but I'd know, I had to be aware of who was out there. I mean, I didn't have to, but
you said the other day you did research on Walker.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. I love that when you said that. It was great.
Oh, for sure. The game notes used to come around and they were in your stall. So you would get there and then I would highlight certain things. And, eventually you would just learn through reading and studying that way. But, I think even way back, I think you could go way back. The methods might be different, but, hockey players, sports athletes, they're going to try to be prepared. It's just a little bit different now. And where do I think hockey's at? Look, I know a lot of old school guys. A lot of my heroes are from the old game, right? I grew up watching it. They say your heroes are formed when you're 10 or 12 years old. And, people that played and then they retire, they tend to be nostalgic and romanticize the era that they played in. Look, there's a lot I loved about my era. There's a lot I love now. The game's certainly faster. It's more inclusive. That's for sure. I know people talk about fighting being gone. It's not gone, though. There's hundreds each year. Right. And we'll see where that goes. Am I going to dwell on it? No. Players are more prepared. They're definitely, and there's something to see in that. I mean, are you kidding me how fast the game is now? If you're not impressed going to an NHL game and seeing how fast those guys make moves and there's lots I love about the era I played in. But hockey has gone for better or for worse. I think it's in a better place than it was. The pendulum often swings, as does society, right? It'll go 2 steps forward, maybe 1 back, maybe 3 steps forward, maybe 3 back. But eventually we get to a place, right? People could say, oh, they wear so much gear now. Yeah, they should have always worn it. Like, there's all kinds of things, Oh, the net going around. Remember when the puck used to just fly up? I'm like, why was that a good thing? Why was it good not to have the net? Do you even notice it when you're at a game? So some people just try to cling to the past. Look, there's always going to be things we can improve on. Right now, if it's me, I would take out the video offsides and I would maybe restructure the shootout. But yeah, that's a maybe. Who knows? I trust the hockey minds that are there to point us in the right direction.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
This has been great. Terry, cannot thank you enough. This has been just outstanding. You've been outstanding.
It was really great, Terry, and congratulations on everything that happened there, and love to Penny and the cat behind you there too. Give her a love.
That's Princess. So the film set that I worked on for so many years is right next to SPCA, and Penny Lane would come over, and I live in an area. My parents now are just like maybe 2 minutes down. There's a path that goes behind the houses. Used to be the old railway track, and we don't have a railway anymore. So it's a nice little path that goes by a river, and I go into the SPCA, with Penny Lane, and every time I come out with a kitty. So we've got a few, a small little spot, but it's, we go in and, a lot of them are there, and, if no one, they'll suffer a pretty bad fate right away. So when we can, we like to adopt kittens. I love animals. I'd have a dog, but I'm just not responsible enough. I'm on the road too much.
Gotcha. All right, brother. We appreciate you taking the time, my man. Keep it up, and good luck with new season coming up for Shoresy, eh?
Hey, thanks a lot. I think you guys are going to like it. It was this time, honestly, if you liked anything in season 1 or 2 and you want to watch, season 3 it was so tough to get through the scenes. I mean, because we were laughing so much. Now, I just think it's going to take on a new level in just a few months. And guys, I mean this, man. If there's nothing else that happened through all this, is that I'm getting in touch with old hockey acquaintances, of which you guys are both a couple of them. So honestly, this means the world to me as much as it does to you. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Terry Ryan joining us here.
Thank you. Great seeing you.
All right. Terry Ryan joining us on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Man, the only thing we were missing there, Pierre, is a couple Guinness.
Yes. You should have actually done a live remote from George Street.
Oh, I would love that.
That is a spectacular part of the world. Back in the day, back in the 1980s, I spent a lot of time on the road recruiting and used to go to Newfoundland a lot. They had a lot of good players. And one of the guys I tried to recruit from there was a kid by the name of Teddy Russell. He ended up going to UNH. He had a real nice career at UNH and spent a little time playing in Hershey. And I really got a warm, every time I went there, just the reception, the people, the passion of the people. You could just hear it in the way Terry spoke and how proud he is to be living there and obviously playing his one game coming back. Just phenomenal. I have so much respect for the way Terry's handled himself after his hockey career. It's been spectacular. It really has been. He deserves a lot of credit.
Well, like I said, and like I can relate, Pierre, because I've had some regrets too, but you kind of have to learn. And I thought Terry's, what he told us and what he said after the game the other day, you need to learn to just, this has been my life, and I got to take what has happened and now make the best of it and bring it to a new chapter. And I think he's the prime example of that. I mean, the career didn't pan out, but he's never lost his love for the game or his connection to the game. And he's found a new niche in acting. And I respect that so much. I just think it's a good example for everybody out there, especially, the older folks are not older, but I mean, as we get older and you kind of look back, I should have done this. Don't worry about what you should have done. Take what you did and parlay it into something else. And you can do that. You can do that. And hey, God bless him. Like I said, he got to have a wake while he's alive. I love it. They got the song Finnegan's Wake. We'll call it Terry's Wake.
There you go. That's great.
Good stuff.
Pumped up for tomorrow. We got Kevin Paul Dupont coming on tomorrow, which will be just outstanding.
And we'll have to. There's as I found out, and you can check it out on Boston Hockey Now, kind of a bogus rumor going around about Patrice Bergeron, but we'll reflect back because both Kevin and I got to cover Bergeron, future Hall of Famer, and what a class act he was. And I'm sure we'll have some Bergeron stories there. We'll talk about the current state of the Bruins, the NHL, and look back on his journalism career, which has really been an amazing one. And like I said, Pierre, and you loved when I brought it up too. I mean, one of my inspirations for becoming a hockey journalist was reading his Sunday column. Every Sunday, I look forward to that. I would shut my door and lock myself in there and read away. And of course, then you had Peter Gammons on baseball, Will McDonough on football. Those were the days. And that was part of why
I remember Dan Shaughnessy.
Yeah, he's still going.
No, you're right on. I mean, even if, and I'm going to say this to Kevin, even if he wrote something bad about you, you still wanted to read the column.
Yeah.
So it was all good. It's
good stuff. It's good. And you know what you said about George? I got to get up there, Pierre, because a lot of people tell me being a James Patrick Murphy, I would fit right in there. So,
well, I think you'd be just fine. Yeah.
All right, maybe someday we'll do that together.
You have to deal with the screech. If you could deal with the screech, you'd be okay.
All right, I look forward to it, and I look forward to our episode tomorrow. Another edition of Press Box Thursday with Kevin Paul DuPont, Hall of Fame puck scribe for the Boston Globe here in the Eye Test. That's Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.